Welcome to the Esports Research Report. I'm Dr. Brian McCauley here in the city of DreamHack in Jönköping at the Media Management and Transformation Center.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Stephanie Orm from Emmanuel College in Boston. And today we have with us again, Nico Besombes. Nico is an associate professor of sociology of sport at the University of Paris and the current vice president of the Esports Federation or Association, right? The Esports Association. There we go. So many organizations Nico's a part of, it gets hard to keep them all straight. Welcome back, Nico.
Thank you very much for having me.
Full disclosure, this is the exact same session as last time. We're not going to pretend it's a different episode. We're recording two at once. That's why it's not that we don't change our clothes over the months. It's just that we're doing this all at once.
So speaking of last time we had Nico on, we asked our usual opener question, which is how do you define esports, to which he gave an excellent answer. But today, why don't we start off asking how the French understand or define esports? So what is esports basically in France?
So I'm the vice president of the French Esports Association, which is called actually France Esports. We are not a federation. We are not seeking for the sports recognition. So this is why we don't use the term federation, but we try to address some different challenges for the French esports ecosystem. And one of the first things that the association has tried to do is to define what is the practice that the association actually try to represent. And as the association want to represent the broader aspect of esports, it has been decided by the board members to have actually a very large definition of esports, which is very specific. So the idea is for France Esports that the definition of esports is all the practices that actually propose or make it possible for people to confront themselves on a computer games or on a video game. So the main difference between the traditional definition of esports and all the competitive, criterion that we have in the definition of esports is the fact that here we don't use this competitive criterion. And this is just the idea that even if you are playing against someone, even if it's for fun, it's already a part of esports. It's mostly recreational esports, not really competitive esports. So you see, we make the difference between recreational and competitive esports, which can be for some people very disturbing that to associate competitive in esports, because for some people in esports, there is competition, of course. But so, for example, if we play together, a game of FIFA or a game of Street Fighter, we are not registering for any competition. We are just playing for fun. But it's a kind of esports, because for the association, we think that we are close to esports when we are confronting ourselves, on a video game. Then if maybe on Mario Kart, for example, which is not considered as the major esports game in the world, but it's closest to esport than playing StarCraft 2 on the campaign mode. StarCraft 2 is, considered as one of the biggest esports in the world and one of the most historical esports in the world, and especially in Southeast Asia. But we think in the association that playing the campaign mode, so playing against the computer, playing against the software, is very far from esports. And then playing a Mario Kart game between friends, or actually against friends, it's close to esports than playing only StarCraft 2 on the campaign.
Hold on there. No, hold on. Mario Kart could never be an esport because of the blue shell. I mean, that's just, isn't luck like a kind of thing that esports is defined by an element of luck can't be there? Because that blue shell, man, we've all had that moment. We're romping home. Ha ha ha, blue shell, I hate you. So could Mario Kart be an esport?
That's a very good point. Actually, there are world championships on Mario Kart, and French are quite good, I must admit. And actually, what I've discovered is the fact that, like you, it's too random to be an esports actually, and we know that in esports we don't like random and stuff like that. But what I've discovered is that the best players of Mario Kart in the world, they are digging into the code of the game, and they know actually what are the probabilities of appearance of a blue shell regarding your position at the different lap of the game. So it means that they know that if you are first at the second lap, you will be actually you will have bad bonus, the worst bonuses that you can have in the race. So you have to be second or third at the second lap to have better bonuses to try actually to finish first during the third or the fifth lap. I don't know. So what I really appreciate with Mario Kart is the fact that even if there is a lot of random in the game, the players are adapting their strategy, and this is where is the skill, at the exception of course the technical skills, all the coordination between the hand and the eye and stuff like that. But they try to adapt their strategy regarding all the rules, the implicit rules of the game. They are digging in the code to find the best way to win the game. So
Mario Kart competitors are the sneakiest people in esports, is what you're saying.
This is you said it. I didn't say it, but
you implied it. You implied it.
I was thinking too about like games like Hearthstone, right? It's a card game. Yeah. There's a lot of randomness seemingly, but like to your point, Nico, right? The skill is in like the deck building for one.
Exactly.
So there is randomness, but you kind of control how much, but then how you respond to those situations, right? And how you adapt and innovate, and that's where the skill lies. So I think you could probably say, even some first-person shooters, there's probably elements of luck involved, right?
Of course.
Not to like keep going on down this rabbit hole, but I think that's a really interesting point that you were talking about for sure.
Hey, look, in CSGO, you go up against the best player. If he's hitting you in the head every time, it's like, I consider myself very unlucky that the Smurf keeps getting me. And I go, I'm not going that direction anymore. I'm going to switch location because it's luck whether the Smurf gets to you first or your teammate. So there's always an element of luck, is what I'm saying in everything. I mean, football. I mean, poor old England a few months ago, or last night in reality.
Last night.
So look, your sociology of sports, just to bring back to this, right? What is the sociology of sport, so that anyone who wouldn't understand what it is you're a associate professor of?
Yeah, it's a science, first of all. Sociology is a science. And actually the sociology of sport has emerged in the late 60s. Mostly the main objective of the sociology of sport is to first observe sport, then try to define it, then try to analyze it, and then to theorize it. This is the main objective of the sociology of sport. So there are many topics that are addressed in the sociology of sports around the world. It can be diversity in sport, sexual harassment in sport. It can be also governance in sports, institutionalization in sport. It can also be, the performance optimization for elite athletes in sport. So there are a lot of topics that are addressed. And now since 50 years, that's it, a little bit more, 50 years, this field actually is gaining more and more importance in the sports sciences, especially regarding health and sports and performance optimization in sports.
Look, I did my PhD on smartphone games, right? And they were ruined for me after that. It's because I've been, it's just like, oh God, I know what they're doing now. I know it applies to all games, particularly with the mechanisms of smartphone games. So has been a professor of sociology sport ruined any sports for you? Did you used to love golf or something, and then you analyzed it too much, or does it take away from the enjoyment of sport? Your research?
I'm not sure to understand what you are asking.
Do you ever find yourself thinking so much about sport that you don't want to watch sport or play sport? Or
no, to be honest, how I went into esports is the fact that I have some friends since now high school, I think, that were really fond of gaming. And I was not the guy. I don't really play video games, and I never played that much video games. But I remember that in high school, when StarCraft 1 was released, before Brood War, so the 6 months before Brood War was released, I tried StarCraft, and it was amazing. But this is where I discovered that I was really bad at video games, and my friend, they were really good. And first of all, I thought that it was only luck, and then I discovered that it was not luck. It was just playing, training, creating strategies, and also dexterity, motor skills. And this is where I the first time I can remember where I did the link between sports and esports, and all the motor skills and the physicality, because I'm a basketball player, or actually I tried to be a basketball player. And something that we are repeating a lot, this is all the gesture of the shot, and this is quite the same with StarCraft or CSGO. You have to, or I did my PhD on fighting game communities. So this is what they call execution in fighting game. This is what we call micro in strategy games. This is what you call skill or aim in shooter games or in FPS or TPS. So the idea is, this is the technical aspect. This is how I went into esports. This is because I was interested in my friends. So I was interested in what they were doing and what they were enjoying. So I really appreciate to watch basketball game. And I think that, Steph, we did an interview last year about your paper. But
we did. We talked about this. I think that's how we met.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. I was telling you that I was enjoying as much watching right now Chris Paul with Phoenix in the NBA Finals, that I'm enjoying watching, I don't know, Ziwu or Simple on CSGO, or Caps or Reckless on League of Legends. This is quite the same emotion that I'm feeling when I'm watching these guys. So yeah, I appreciate both sports and esports.
I actually find it harder to watch CSGO now that I play it, because when I'm watching it, I'm going, oh, I would love a game. And you're watching it on the thing you play on, you go, I'll put the game and I'll play it. And it's just, that's the thing with esports, is that I can watch football at 10 o'clock at night in a bar, and I'm not going, oh, come on, lads, we go outside for a game. I'll kick around, go with 5 beers in this. But if you're watching esports, usually where you're watching, particularly during lockdown, means that you always have access to playing it, even though I think one thing defines it is that 40% of people watch esports that they don't play, or is it higher?
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen the statistic. It's something. It's a large number of people who, okay. Yeah, or at least not those particular games. Like, they'll watch games that they don't play themselves. Yeah.
I'm this kind of guy, actually. I'm watching a lot of esports that I'm not playing, to be honest. I really appreciate. I enjoy what these players actually are doing, and I can appreciate how good they are. Even if I'm not playing, I can appreciate that a headshot or a triple kill is something. I can appreciate the fact that a violet push or a sand build is something amazing. An insect on League of Legends or stuff like that. I understand why it's only a small part of the players in the world that can do that. And when you understand that, it's fantastic to look at it, even if you are not playing the game.
I played football against an under-16 Irish international once when I was younger, and I was never good at football. I was terrible, in fact. But to play, I played with some excellent people who played underage for Ireland or onto big clubs and stuff. And it was like, like they were magicians. And the same thing when you play with your friend who's the top rank in CSGO, and it's like magic, the difference. And you're going like, there's no way I could spend the next 10 years just playing CSGO 12 hours a day, being coached by Ismail or someone, and I still would not get near. They're like Michael Jordan, they're Michael Phelps, they're Pele, they're any of those people. It's an astonishing sort of leap with their genius. To be honest, it's just It's not replicable.
Actually, I understand what you mean, but I want to nuance that, because all the narrative about the genius, the talent, I think it's not good for for these players because they are working a lot and everybody is talking about, okay,
Oh yeah,
it's a
sorry.
gift. No, wait. I just wanted to nuance that because I think that it's just putting down all the work that they are doing to reach this level. And I every time I see in the media someone saying, "Oh, it's a gifted boy, it's a gifted athlete," or it's the talent that is speaking. No, I understand what you mean, but actually, this is the work. Maybe
of course. No,
they are
David
good.
Beckham. David Beckham,
Yeah.
perfect example. He'd stay back after training and practice his free kicks. Of course, as Michael Jordan, of course, you've seen the documentaries.
Exactly.
On him. It's work, but it's that extra little bit on top of all that work that makes the difference.
Exactly.
I mean, so you're sociology of sport, and a lot of your research is on ecosystems in esports, right? So, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, because we're going to talk about the French esports soon, but just let's put it in the context of ecosystem. So what is an esport ecosystem according to your work to date?
Yeah, why I use this term ecosystem is the fact that when we are speaking about an ecosystem is the fact that all the stakeholders are interdependent from each other. Actually, this is the main idea. It means that in esports, there is something very specific. This is the publisher. The publisher, they own the game. They own the intellectual property of the game. So they are actually at the center of this ecosystem. But without players, there are no competition. Without league organizer, there are no competition. Without, staff, managers or physical therapists, mental trainer, there are no performance. And without the publisher, there are no games. So actually, all these stakeholders of this ecosystem are all interdependent, the one from each other. So this is why I use this term, and I think it's quite appropriate regarding esports. But the main difference, for example, between sport and esports, in my opinion, but we can discuss about that. But in sports, we put the athlete at the center of the ecosystem, and the federation, the staffs, the coach, the physical trainers, they are all, turned to for the athlete that is at the center of the ecosystem. In my opinion, in esports, the publisher is at the center of this ecosystem because actually the publisher owns the intellectual property. So everybody is linked to the publisher in the esports ecosystem.
Yeah, because if FIFA said no more football, it wouldn't be like all the footballs in the world or empty Coke cans or tennis balls or whatever we used as kids would disappear. You still have football. If Valve said no more CSGO, I mean, people would have pirated versions of it, of course, but the legit version would be gone. It's godlike power by the publishers that makes the difference.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, I get where we're coming from as like someone who reads about the industry, right, and like studies the industry. But I feel like if you ask, well, players certainly, right, would probably have they'd probably put players in the center. And I feel like many spectators, right, would also put players in the center because that's how we tend to think about traditional sport, right? So yeah, I agree. I think publishers are a huge piece of this puzzle. And I feel like we don't often conceptualize it that way, right? Especially people kind of outside of academia.
And also because they are quite hidden when you are watching an esports competition or when you are interested in esports. Actually, this is not the name of the publisher that you are thinking the first of everything. You are actually thinking about the players, but the teams, mostly about the teams, of course, sometimes about the tournaments. So, but you are not thinking first of the publisher, about the publisher. So this is also, I think, why we try to translate what we know from the sports to esports, but that sometimes it doesn't fit because if you are not inside the industry and working on it, sometimes some very specific stuff are just escaping from your mind, from your view. You don't see them. So yeah, at the exception, for example, of Riot, which is very present regarding all their games and especially League of Legends. But right now, when you are speaking about, for example, we were speaking on the last podcast about Trackmania, a racing game, about arcade racing game. I know who is behind Trackmania, who is the publisher? It's Naidio, and who has been bought by Ubisoft. But nobody really knows that. People know Trackmania, they know Carl Jr., which is the best player in the world, but they really don't know who is the developer or who is the publisher.
What does this mean for how the French esport ecosystem operates? I mean, you're in the French Association, Esport, Association de Français, and you're in a very sort of privileged position, both as a professor in sociology of sport, but also with the association to view this. I mean, it's quite unique perspective with the academic, the practice side, and in such a huge country. Like, was it 50, 60 million people? Like, just massive. Just it's 5 Swedens worth of esports. So I mean, how would you describe? If you think about it, it's 10 Irelands. I mean, it's how do you describe the French esport ecosystem?
So we are 67 millions in France, and we don't speak that English very good. So we have a very specific ecosystem because as we are not speaking that much English, everything is in French. So it allowed 20 years ago a lot of stakeholders to emerge specifically for this country and this geographical zone. For example, on League of Legends, quite the vast majority of the country of the world are just following the main broadcast. But in France, we have our own broadcast, specific broadcast for French people that actually who doesn't speak English. So how it is organized in France, esports is not recognized as a sport, and we are not seeking to recognize esport as a sport because sports is very specific in each country. The governance of sports is very specific. For example, in US, you have no Ministry of Sport. It's US Olympics that actually govern sports. But in France, we have a Ministry of Sport, and we have some very constraining legal aspects about sports. And actually, in our law, the federation own the intellectual property of the local competition, of the national competition. So imagine if esports is recognized as a sport in France, it means that the main professional League of Legends championships won't be anymore regulated by Riot Games. They will lose their intellectual property, and it will be the French Federation. But Riot Games, they won't accept that. And we have, in my opinion, what can be a chance in France is the fact that we have a lot of amongst the main publishers in esports that have headquarters in France. We have Riot Games, we have Activision Blizzard, we have Capcom, we have Bandai Namco, we have Microsoft, Sony. We don't have Valve or Epic, but we have some of the most important publishers on the territory in France. And I think it's a chance because it's a way to when someone or a stakeholder wants to organize something about esports and do something, we have a direct access, a direct contact with the publisher. If you take Belgium or Switzerland just next to us, they don't have the publisher on their country. So if they want to organize something, they have to ask to the headquarters in US or maybe in Southeast Asia or in Japan, which is quite difficult to have some answers and stuff like that. So this is why the esports ecosystem in France is very dynamic. First, because we only speak French, so a lot of very specific web TV and stakeholders have emerged for French people, and because we have a lot of actually publishers on the territory. And we have this big publisher, the French publisher Ubisoft, which is very important also. And so this ecosystem has been recognized in 2016 by the French government, but not, as I said, the Ministry of Sport, but by the State Secretary of Digital Industry, which is actually attached to the Ministry of Economy. So we can say in France that esports is actually more seen as an industry than as a sports.
But you say it in French, of course, because nobody speaks English there. I mean, that's one of the
Okay.
biggest factors, isn't it? That's something you just hit me with there. Like, I play CS:GO,
Mhm.
and it's very rare I talk to a French player. It's always the Scandinavian countries, the Germans, the Austrians, the Swiss, the UK, the Irish, of course. But it's the shared language
Mhm.
that is one of the things that struck me as I've negotiated like friended strangers through matchmaking. So, and you know, France it's not too bad. It's no Spain. It's better than Spain in terms of English language. But I mean, obviously, you know, Francophones and French are very proud of their language. It's a beautiful language. I hated it in high school. It was like, I got a C. Say très bien, Brian. Brian, very good. Yeah. You get a C. Well done. But I know. But like, so this language impact on the large population, it seems to me that is very active component in shaping the ecosystem. That these are two very big characteristics. If you were 10 million people that didn't speak English, tough, right?
Yeah, no, you're right, actually. So at the turn of the 2000s, so in the late 1990s and at the beginning of the 2000s, for example, we had our own streaming platform, which is called Dailymotion, which is specific to France, actually. And Dailymotion at this period, at this era, they did something that nobody has done. They were giving money to have some esports content on their platform. So it was very specific to France. And so it has helped a lot of casters, broadcasters, organizers to emerge, because they knew that they will be found actually by Dailymotion to create some content on the platform. So this is it was a very dynamic period for esports in France at this time. And we had the first web TV in French that has emerged at this time on Dailymotion and on YouTube. It was not live at first, but everyone was trying to do some stuff. And with the release of League of Legends and StarCraft 2 at this period, at the end of the 2000s and at the beginning of the 2010s, when League of Legends and StarCraft 2 were released, actually there were a lot of organization, a lot of association, you know, a lot of clubs, a lot of organizers that were already quite skilled, very they were doing a lot of stuff in France. And so when these two games arrived, everything was set up to push for the games and to push for content. And it has created it has helped all the democratization of esports in France, because these two games were only the support of all the people that were working since now 10 years to create something about esports. And it has been a massive push during the 2010s, where we have seen Ponfétude, which is very specific in France. There were two brothers that were actually broadcasting StarCraft 2, and they pushed StarCraft 2 in France very at the highest level, and it was the best esports. And they created some events in huge venues in France, in Paris, before 2010. So it was really they were pioneers actually. And then with League of Legends, they attract new people, new casters, and everything has been created around these casters and these stakeholders and these organizers. And yeah, this is how it began, to be honest, and where we have seen all the accelerating process of the democratization of esports at the turn of the 2010s. So we have right now something like a little bit more a dozen of professional teams. The most famous are Team Vitality, Gamers Origin, Team LDLC. They are the most famous. We have more than 1,500 clubs, associative clubs, you know, grassroots clubs around the country. We have every weekend some local events, some LANs from 20 players to 2,500 players. So it's, of course, very small if we compare to Young Cupping and the DreamHack, but for France, it's something. Yeah, this is very very dynamic. Actually, we have a lot of agencies, talents agencies also. So yeah.
Well, I just did some Googling there. And in 2010, there were 220 million Francophones in the world. 220 million, which is something we kind of forget in our little English language bubble. And Steph hears about people speaking Spanish, of course, with everything that happens there, and no official language in America, of course. And then there's an estimate here by various estimates that by the year 2060, there will be between 370 and 770 million Francophones, with a lot in Africa and places like Haiti. I mean, so the first question is, does the lack of English inhibit the scene at times? And the second question is there a view towards being a major part of the world eco-sport system with the French speakers? Someone's on a bike outside. I muted myself. Yeah, I know. So, is there could French esports and French language esports be a huge part of the future where 10% of the world are, in 20 years' time, almost speaking French? Is that an opportunity for France?
To be honest, I don't know, because of course we have a lot of francophone French-speaking countries around the world, and of course a lot in Africa. But right now, the main issues with Africa is the lack of servers on the country and a lot of infrastructure. If the publishers, they don't install some servers in Africa, it won't actually grow. So right now, the only French-speaking countries that are really, in esports, it's France, Switzerland, a part of Switzerland, a part of Belgium, and the French-speaking Canada. This is mostly these countries. And I don't think that the demographics will be growing that much, but in Africa, it will be growing a lot. We have a lot of French-speaking countries in Africa, like Mali, Senegal, Togo, in sub-Saharan countries of Africa. But we have some stakeholders in France that are really pushing to help Africa to develop their esports scene and their esports ecosystem. But everything depends on the will from the publishers to develop facilities and servers on the continent. So I don't know.
I mean, look, when I learned French, it seems to me that when you go to France, you ask where the library is, où est la bibliothèque. They really hammered that one home. I mean, maybe the future of French language learning will be où est le LAN center, the game center. I mean, when we talk about French esports, so what sort of games? I'm in the land of CSGO. I'm in the land of Dota fans. What is French esports? Is it, world champions in football? I mean, the FIFA titles must be popular there. I mean, what sort of games really do you excel at, or what are popular?
So, first of all, it's League of Legends. Our French professional league is the most followed of all the local leagues in Europe. We have very strong teams. Actually, this year, the Carmine Corp, which is the main French team, has won the European Masters, which is under the LEC, the European Championship of League of Legends. So we have a strong fan base. We have some ultras also in League of Legends. So ultra fans, you know what I mean?
The nut jobs, the mad ones that go bananas.
Yeah, exactly.
The super fans,
exactly. The super fans with all the scarves, the flags, and all the songs and stuff like that. It's beginning.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
I love that, actually.
I love that.
Exactly. That's really cool. So League of Legends is the top notch of all the sports in France. Of course, CSGO, because we have a strong history with CSGO and strong teams in CSGO. Historically, it was Team LDLC, and we had G2, even if G2 is not French, but the lineup during years and years in G2 was a French lineup. Right now, we have Vitality with Ziwu, which actually the team is one of the 3 best in the world, and Ziwu has been crowned 2 times back-to-back best player in the world from HLTV.
I've
So
actually seen him
CS:GO is
live, and he
very
was
strong in
amazing.
France.
He was.
Yeah,
I've seen him live. Even I could tell he was just dominating. It was insane.
exactly. This guy is fantastic, and actually, he has been really followed by his mother to finish his study before going pro. This is quite interesting. The guy, and he's very not shy, but he's not very expensive, very modest, humble. This guy is really touching. You have a lot of affection for this guy, of course. Then after League of Legends, CS:GO. Valorant now is a thing in France. There are a lot of people playing Valorant. Teamfight Tactics, all the Riot Games game actually are really appreciated in France. Rocket League, we have one of the best team in the world on Rocket League. Team Vitality still with K-Dub, Fairy Peak. They have just been crowned 2 weeks ago. So yeah, in the middle of 2021 of the RLCS season 10 championship. We are also a strong country on the fighting games. Street Fighter V, Dragon Ball Fighters, Mortal Kombat. We have a lot of very, very good players, and we have this culture of the arcade. So these games are really appreciated, and of course FIFA is a game that is played a lot, but this is the game that is played the most, but not competitively. This is the video game that has been sold for I think during 8 years. It has been the first video game in sales. This is how we sell.
Top selling video game.
Yeah.
I mean, like Ireland
Exactly.
would be the same. FIFA.
Okay.
It would just be but maybe I don't know how good Ireland are in the international scene, but that's what we grew up playing Pro Evo and FIFA. That I had on the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive. So yeah, there's countries like ours. There's and in America, of course, FIFA has been the reason that actual soccer, as Steph likes to call it, has become more popular through playing FIFA. Hey, how many times I've made fun of American football now? Is this 5 podcasts out of 25? Yeah, good ratio.
It's been a lot. I think too, there's always a lot of interest that gets spurred up whenever the World Cup or something, a big event happens. People were just very into it, for like a couple weeks here, and then it kind of falls off our radar. But yeah, no, FIFA's pretty popular here. Not at all like in Europe, but yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the major esports game are really actually played in France. But if you focus more on the people that are not always registering for competitions, that are just playing for fun, everything is played actually. So FIFA, Fortnite, Rainbow Six, Trackmania, Hearthstone, but also Mario Kart, as we said. So a lot of games are played. We are the last study about the trade union of publishers in France, which is called the CEL, for trade union for publishers of leisure or something like that. I think it's 36 millions of the population who are playing once a week video games, which is quite impressive, to be honest.
But you're a very sporting nation, a very successful sporting nation in rugby, of course. You're a big, where Spain doesn't have a rugby team, Italy doesn't have a rugby team, Germany doesn't have a rugby team. France has got the French Open in tennis. You haven't had that many famous golfers. That's maybe one that you're not so good on. Not compared to Ireland or Spain or America, but you're a tremendously sporting nation. I mean, that's just without a doubt. I mean, I love watching France beat England in rugby because it just drives the English nuts every time. It's brilliant.
Actually, the term sports comes from France. The ancient name of sports is Desport, which is the ancient name for sport, and it comes from France, and so it has been used in the England of the late 18th century. And when it came back from the England, and mostly from the aristocracy of England with Coubertin, for example, also, it was mostly, the term has been readapted and has changed. The signification has changed. First, when people were speaking about Esport, it was mostly about fun games. In French we say badinage. It was just people that were chatting and doing some stuff with their body. But when it came back from England, it was sport as we know it right now, with competition, with rules and stuff like that. But the term is French at the beginning. So I don't know if it's why it's so anchored in France, this idea of to be a sporting nation, for example. But we have Coubertin, of course, who has rehabilitated, or who has recreated the Olympic Games. And this is something that is really in the DNA of France, of course.
That's so interesting about the history. And I think too, it's another example of the sociology of esport. Like you have your ecosystem, your esports ecosystem, but the fact that exists within a larger ecosystem also of sport, right? And within different countries, and every country's esports ecosystem being different, and France is being, in many ways, I'm sure, influenced and tied to your legacy with traditional sports. So that's a nice, like, full circle way to come about the podcast, I feel like. Yeah,
but this is what is something that is quite the same between sport and esport. This is this idea of globalization. It's global but also located. We have some very specificities in France, and in each country has its own specificities regarding the games that are played, the games that the people love to watch, or the way that the government is enhancing and supporting the esports industry in their country. But at the end, it's a global ecosystem and esports, it's digital, so everything is without borders. So you can't only focus on your own country. You have to be aware of everything that is done around the world. And just to give you an example, there are 3 main geographical zones regarding esports. Even there are some zones that are emerging, but North America, Europe, and Southeast Asia, or Asia and China. And you have Africa and South America and Oceania that are pushing, of course. But North America, it's only 1 language or 2 with French, but everybody is speaking English. In Asia, just only China, it's 1 continent where there are different, of course, language in China, but everybody is speaking quite the same or understanding quite the same. But in Europe, it's just small countries with everyone has its own language. So Finnish, Swedish, French, Spanish, Croatian, German, and so on. And if Europe want to stay at the same level, or compete at the same level as North America and China, there is a need to think global in Europe. If you only think for your own country, at the end, Europe will be overpassed by these two geographical zones. And the business, if we have to speak about business, because everything is related to business when we are speaking about the publishers and their intellectual property, will be actually decreasing for Europe. So there is a need to be open-minded and to be open to the other country in Europe. And this idea is why in France, we try to have connection with all the countries around Europe. We have strong connection with actually Germany, with Spain. We try to make this strong link also with Scandinavia. We have very good link with the UK. So just because we need to exchange, to discuss, to share experiences, share good practices, and just to be to not be overpassed, actually.
No, I think it's really interesting, because I did the research in Vietnam, and globalization, this kind of hybrid between Chinese early influences and the European influence was certainly there within the Confucianist culture of Vietnam that had all these French influences, of course, as well. I mean, it was just an absolute hodgepodge of everything. And I think you're quite right. I mean, obviously, Steph, you can see the way France are going to try to take over. They're actually proud of their language. English speakers are just like, yeah, well, everyone speaks it. But French actually are very proud of it. It's a beautiful language. And Mrs. Waldron, I'm sorry, I was such a disappointing student back in the day. I'm sorry, Mom, that she had to call you and say, Brian said I don't speak much French, miss, when I asked him a question in French because I was a little smart ass. Je suis désolé. Yeah, petit peu, petit peu. But like, it's so we got to be careful that the French don't try to make French the official language of esports in Europe, because they actually care about their language.
It won't be good.
Okay, so Nico, I think we've got a good understanding of the French esports ecosystem, and so the final question of the podcast, of course, is what sort of research would you like to see done? I mean, and I'm sure we could add an extra hour of you giving us ideas, but let's think in terms of French or national esports and ecosystems. Let's give you a little bit of a channel here that because I'm seeing a lot of potential to understand these globalization and cultural effects. And then, the ecosystem thing is something I stay away with because I'm not clever enough to deal with that. That's your area. So, I mean, what research do you see needs to be done by other researchers?
Actually, when we did the first pilot of the podcast, my answer was really cool, because it was 12 months ago and we were speaking about sustainability and esports. But right now, we are pushing for that. But the idea stays the same. I think that right now, we need to speak about sustainability in esports, but for players, for clubs, for league organizers, and for publishers. Because everybody right now, we know that esports is going to last. It's okay for that. But at what price? And when I say at what price for the player, for their health, at what price for the clubs, what will be their business model, at what price for the organizers, regarding the fact that they are losing control of the competitive on their competitive scene because the publisher are regaining their control on their intellectual property, but also at what price for the publishers, how make sustainable competitive scene for their games to avoid what we have seen with Heroes of the Storm, for example, with Blizzard Entertainment. So
I don't even remember that one. That's what,
I still play that occasionally, but yeah, it's been
cool.
sad what happened with it.
So yeah, it has been really sad, but sad for everybody, and mostly for the players and the teams that were built for to play on this game. So this idea of sustainability for me is really, really important, because how you make all the stakeholders that are I say it again, interdependent, the one from each other, how we make it sure that everyone is earning something for the future, and how everyone can last in the future. And the main focus right now is mostly about the players. We are speaking a lot about the health of the player and the careers of the players, but there are a lot of stuff to do to make them last longer, actually. Something that is said is the fact that at 24, 25, this is the end of the career of a player, but it's not true. It's just because the scene are not enough professionalized. So the player, there is no projection in the future. If you are not at the elite level, you have nothing when you are a player. So if we professionalize all this ecosystem for the players from the grassroots to the highest level, it will be more sustainable, but also about the health and well-being concern, and how the teams are staffed, and how the competencies of the staff are actually growing to help the players to last longer, to make them career last longer. For the teams, their business model and how they can diverse or make their revenue streams more diverse, because right now the fact is that most of this esports business is led by sponsorship and private investments. But we have seen it during the health crisis of the COVID-19. Everybody is saying esports has been the big winner of the crisis. But this is not true. Esports actually has suffered from the crisis, because this health crisis has has been coupled by an economical crisis, and all the sponsors and investors of esports have been actually directly touched by this economical crisis. And during, I don't know, 6, 8, 9 months, nobody was investing anymore in esports, because actually, first of all, the first concern of this sponsor was just to protect their employees and the salaries of their employees. So there has been a decrease for the first time of the market, the esports market, since 2018 and the subprime crisis. So every time there is an economical crisis, the esports market is decreasing. So it just means that right now the market is too dependent of the private investments and the sponsors. So how we can make it more diverse? So public fundings, crowdfunding, merchandising, I don't know, esports betting, even if I'm not really fan of that, but this is something, there are many possibilities. So right now what we see is that clubs, teams, orgs around the world are trying to find new ways to actually make money. So FaZe and One Thieves, it's more about influencers and streamers and lifestyle, which is fantastic. I'm really fan of what they are doing. Fnatic in Europe, they are selling gears, keyboards, mice, headsets, stuff like that. In France, we have a lot of teams that are creating, how do we say that? Sports and esports for grassroots and schools, weeks during vacation. The morning,
like summer camps or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Camps.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to shorten this bit by giving him an hour channel, and he's come up with 17 PhDs worth in every sentence. I mean, Nico, you know what? French esports are absolutely very lucky to have you as their vice president. It's very clear how passionate you are. The only problem is this podcast is in English, so they'll never hear you say it and appreciate you fully in their second language. But it's very clear how passionate you are, and and I love working with you. And maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we might be posting under this video a paper by us on sustainability. Fingers crossed. But in other words, thank you very much, Nico, for being on the podcast. All the details are below the video or the Spotify or whatever way you're listening to it. Steph, have you any final questions for Nico about Le Français Esport?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive. Thank you so much, Nico, for hanging out with us again.
No, thank you very much. I'm really sorry if I'm speaking too much. Really sorry.
That's great. It's great. I mean, someone talks more than me. It's a first. So, salut, bonne nuit, au revoir.
Bonne nuit aussi. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Seven,